on the couch and let's have a family meeting in the Banks household, particularly talking to marketers, because I'm a marketer. So I like marketers more than I like everybody else. Let's keep it real, right? So let's talk to marketers. And the thing about business folks, whether you're a marketer or not, you know the impact of communications and media. You know how impactful marketing communications and mediated communications can be, right? And we see it all around us, right? Constantly selling us things, telling us to do things, go places, consume certain things. And these things populate television, print, out of home, radio, digital, social networking platforms, video games, right? And the thing about these mediated or these culturally mediated vehicles by which information is delivered is that they can be very, very, very influential. And the thing to know about that is that that's the job of marketers, right? Our job as marketers are to influence behavior, to get people to adopt behavior. That is what we do. And the media helps us do this quite well. That is, the vehicle that delivers information helps us do this unbelievably well. Marshall McLuhan, who's a psychologist, or was a psychologist, sociologist, he puts it this way, that all media work us over completely. They are pervasive in their personal, political, economic, aesthetic, psychological, moral, ethical, social consequences that they leave no part of us untouched, unaffected, and unaltered. The media works us over completely. Think about this in the context of beauty, right? This is the shape, pardon the pun, this is the shape of beauty in this country, right? We have collectively decided that this is beautiful, right? Certain physique is beautiful, right? Thin, long hair, beautiful. But decades before that, beauty was a little more shapely. And before that, a little more shapelier than that. And way before that, even more curvy, right? But we decide what is acceptable based upon the media that we digest. Even like the media that our children digest, by the way. So like princesses, you can't turn on anything that is designed for children where the female character is not a princess or some damsel in distress, right? And I'm uniquely sensitive to this because I'm the father of two little girls, right? A 19-month-old and a 6-year-old. And my 6-year-old Georgia, like everything for her is princesses. Like at 3 years old, obsessed with Elsa. Anymore. Fast forward 3 years later, Halloween, just this past Halloween, she was Princess Jasmine. And I tried to intercede the year before that, and she went Halloween as Leia. But even Leia is a princess. You can't get out of this thing, right? The media that we consume works us over completely. In a more tragic way, the way Black people are represented in this country frames the way this country sees us. And it didn't just start with this. It's way, way, way longer history, right? The media works us over completely. That's why when people see this image as a society, that looks scary. Why? Because the media that we consume, our media diet, has framed that those things, that those people should be feared. In the communication literature, this is referred to as public pedagogy. That is, it's the media that we consume that informs how we find out about people that we don't know. Collectives of people, societies, communities of people. We learn them based on the media we digest, the television we watch, the articles we read, all the framings that we see of people. This shapes the way we see them. And here's where things get crazy. The more we see it, the more we believe it to be true. The more we're exposed to it, the more we believe it to be accurate. And we know this probably far too well, considering the last 4 years in the media that we have been consuming.
I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about trouble and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 And it is extremely dangerous to our democracy. The media works us over completely. You think about the fake news that has been propagated over the last 5 years. These things are a part of our media diet. And they frame how we see the world, frame how we learn about the world. Daniel Kahneman says this way: a reliable way to make people believe in falsehoods is to frequently repeat the falsehood, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. Authoritarian institutions and marketers have known this to be fact forever. The media works us over completely. And the more we hear it, the more we believe it to be true. Not only that, but the more we hear it, the more we prefer it. The more we hear it, the more we like it. Right? The literature refers to this as the mere exposure effect. And the idea is that the more we are exposed to a certain stimuli, the more our attitudes start to shift favorably for it. For those of you guys in the MBA program, you know this very, very well. When you first came to the MBA program, you looked around and was like, oh, everybody here ugly. And then 2 months later, you're like, well, she's kind of cute. Or like, he has a really nice personality. And before long, you're in love, right? You see that person every day, they just wear on you, right? It's the same reason why you like Bad and Bougie. This is not a good song. It is objectively a bad song. But you hear this thing 5 million times, before long, you like Raindrops, Drop Top. Like, that is the media. It works us over completely. And our media diet is shaping the way we see the world and ultimately influencing how we behave in the world. And as we digest these things, we collectively say, this is acceptable. That is, it becomes legitimated. So what? Okay, so what's the point? Fine, great. All right, fine. We canceled R. Kelly, great. And sure, media has influence over us when it comes to how we legitimate things. All right, fine, cool. All right, fine, Marcus. But what's the point? The point is that marketers, we have an unbelievable power in our ability to influence people and what we collectively decide is acceptable. I mean, smoking, good grief. We've known smoking is killing us forever. But we marketers in our savviness, no. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you smoke, you die. Sure, yeah, great. But your physicians say it's all good. It's all Gucci, right? In fact, blow a little smoke in her face and she'll love you. Like, you can smoke while you're pregnant. What's the big deal? No big whoops. And then we got really good. We said that, like, you're not a man unless you smoke. You're a pansy unless you smoke. Even James Dean couldn't escape the allure, dying young, leaving a good-looking corpse, right? The marketing communication ultimately legitimated smoking. That was, of course, until a new batch of marketers came in and decided to tell the truth about smoking in such a way that would change the meaning-making frame by which we see the world and ultimately how we behave in the world.
1,200 people actually look like. Keep on them up, guys.
Truth Campaign debuts with this communications, and over a short period of time, studies have found that marketing execution over a short period of time kept almost 500,000 young teens from smoking, saved almost $6 billion in healthcare costs in the first 2 years. Not only that, as we were exposed to this messaging, our entire disposition about smoking changed as well. It's like, oh, you smoke? Why would you do that to yourself? So much so that we actually changed our policies in buildings. It's like, oh, you want to smoke? Go outside and smoke. And you can look like zombies huddled together to burn one. That, with taxes put in place that we, our law officials, our political representatives voting on, over time changed our perception and ultimately our behavior with regards to smoking. Smoking was delegitimated based upon what we do as marketers. That's super powerful. It's Superman powerful. And as Uncle Ben would say, with great power comes great responsibility, which means us marketers, we have an unbelievable responsibility with regards to how we use this great power to influence. Gay marriage was a thing 20 years ago, was like a no-no. Are you kidding me? We don't touch that. Media producers, cultural authors began to create provocations into the cultural discourse that allow us to start talking about these things. It encouraged people to have these conversations. And then marketers, late to the game, but showing up nonetheless, began to voice where they stand. In fact, I did this work for Bud Light. Subaru grabbed the mantle and just ran with it. And over time, the meaning-making frames, that is, the way we see what is normal, what is acceptable, what people like us do in this country, has shifted drastically with how we think about gay marriage. Right? That's great. That's unbelievably powerful. We should be doing those things. We proposed with the diamond because the Beers told us to. Late 1930s, launched a campaign, and now everything we do, diamonds are forever, so we propose with the diamond. Introduced to Japan, exact same thing. Salt and Pepper released Let's Talk About Sex, partner with LifeBeat, the marketers at LifeBeat, say let's talk about AIDS, and introduce AIDS into the discourse in this country and begin to shift our perspective with regards to it. All these things are mediated by the cultural product that we put in the world. Content creators, cultural authors, media outlets, us, business folks, we did that. Congratulations, you should be proud of yourself. That's great. That's us. We did that. We have an unbelievable amount of power in our ability to influence what people, the community, deems acceptable. But here's the catch. There's always a catch. Here's the catch. The same power that can change the perspective on how we see things like smoking, how we see things like proposing, if you think it's a positive thing. Those same things work to less savory outcomes. Nazi Germany, these things were byproducts of the media that was consumed. The first thing that the Third Reich did was say, we want to control all media, radio. We control that, all of it. Because the media works us over completely. I mean, more pressingly, the police. We know the police, their tagline is to protect and serve. And when we see police killing people who look like us in the street because we look like us, we say, how can you do this? Your job is to protect and serve. But the history of the police is far more nefarious than that. Right? The job of the police was to police slaves. They just being who they are. But we, over time, because of our media diet, have been told that no, the police care. The police are there to protect you. Heck, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and we had the blue pigs. I grew up in public schools where a band of police officers literally will come and sing Temptation songs. The police was my friends. So to see police kill people who look like me is jarring. We legitimated that. We collectively decided that, hey, cool, marketers said they're here to protect and serve, so we believed it. The media works us over completely, and we as marketers, as a business community, have a responsibility to how we use that media. You see this image and it's jarring because that a white girl in a white society buying black dolls, come on, son. That don't seem right at all. Not because it's objectively wrong, but because according to the norms that we have decided is acceptable in this country, that seems wrong. Or that those white women be doing those Asian women's pedicures. That seems wrong. Or that white woman will be serving that Latino ex woman. That seems wrong. Or, I mean, it's Black History Month, so let's keep it real, right? In February, we always see pictures of, what our past were in this country. We see Black bodies hanging from limbs, trees. That seems wrong. It's because of our media diet. We, marketers, have the ability to change the way people see the world and ultimately behave in the world. That is, we have the ability to influence what is legitimate, what is acceptable. And hopefully you're starting to see that this impact is more than just economics. This is more than just consumption. This is about how we as a society function. And this is where things get good. This is where things get good, at least for me. This is where things get good. So while marketers have ton of responsibility because we have tons of power, we decide what's acceptable. Us, we, society, we, it is a communal thing. So while we ingest media, we negotiate and construct what is acceptable. Let's make this more tangible. You probably know the brand of sneakers, Allbirds. Right? You probably know them before. They are the story goes that they are from New Zealand, merino wool from New Zealand sheep. I suppose they're special, right? And they're super innocuous, right? They're not overly branded. Supposed to be very breathable, very, very comfortable. And then it came out like 2016, maybe 2017. And I remember vividly seeing ads in my newsfeed that looked like this. The shoe's simplicity might be the secret to its success. Business Insider. Oh, see it in my newsfeed? I see that media in my newsfeed on Facebook. I read Business Insider, so it's got my attention. But you know what? I got other things going on in my life, so I keep on scrolling. Realize that almost 1,500 people liked it, but keep on scrolling. Then a few weeks later, I see the same ad in my newsfeed, but this time Julie Chu liked it. Let me tell you what Julie Chu is. Julie Chu and I used to work together in the agency world, and I would never describe her as a friend. She's an associate at best. Like we say hi in the morning. If we make small talk while we're waiting on like our coffee, and that's it. Like we don't chum it up. But when I saw this, I was like, Julie Chu. Okay, keep on scrolling. Then another ad comes in. Julie Chu says, very happy with my Allbirds. I love them. I seriously want every color now. Can't wait to bring them with me on my next trip. Oh, really? Oh. 2 weeks later, I own a pair. Julie ain't even my friend like that. That's unbelievably powerful. So yes, Marshall McLuhan was right. The media works us over completely, 100%. But the most influential media is the media of people, us. We rely on people for everything. We're social animals by nature, as Aristotle would say. We rely on people for everything. In fact, we trust people more than any form of marketing communication, more than print, out of home, radio, billboards, television placement, native banners. In fact, we trust strangers more than we trust marketers. right? You go on Amazon and you trust the reviews more than you trust the company you're going to buy from. You trust Sexy Lover 24 from Denver more than you trust the brand that you're actually going to give your money. We decide what is acceptable. We influence each other. All of y'all, me, you, your mama, your cousin too, all of us, we decide what is legitimate. Which brings us back to R. Kelly. Look at that. Surviving R. Kelly launched January 2019, and the social networking world was in a blaze. Twitter, Facebook, everybody's going crazy. We didn't learn anything new. We learned new information. We knew R. Kelly was a dirtbag. We knew he married an underage Aaliyah back in the 90s. We knew about the tape. Even Dave Chappelle told us. And then almost 3 years later, the Boondocks reminded us. We knew all that, but we still stepped in the name of love. We still got it in when Ignition came on. Right? Don't let my mind's telling me no start. We go crazy. None of those things changed. It wasn't the documentary that changed how we saw R. Kelly. It was us. It was us communally watching this thing around the campfire at the same time saying, yo, this dude's a dirtbag. We collectively negotiated and constructed that, nah, we're done with this dude. We're done. We're done. We're done. So what does this mean then? I'll tell you what it means. It means that we have the power to legitimate. We as marketers, for sure. We as business folks, for sure. But we as citizens of this world, we legitimate things. We are the reason why wearing tattoos to work is acceptable. We decided that. We decided, whether you like it or not, that athleisure is acceptable to wear in public. We decided that. Online dating, 20 years ago, it was like, you met online. Ugh, how pathetic are you? Unless it's Black Planet and you're just trying to, do what you do, right? But like dating online, ugh. 10 years ago, only 3% of relationships or dating encounters happen online. Now 30% of them happen. Us, right? Have you ever seen an ad for Yeezys? Have you ever seen an ad for Yeezys? Never. But Kanye's built, whether you like it or not, $1 billion empire because we decided that those were valuable. Even more important, have you ever seen a Zoom ad? Never. Right? Nah, you've never seen a Zoom ad. But Zoom's business is through the roof. We're using it right now. We collectively decide what's in. We collectively decide what is acceptable. We collectively decide what is congruent with what is normal for people like us. So what does this all mean? I'll tell you, if I haven't said enough already. The we decide what is acceptable, that we decide what is legitimate, influenced by marketers, but we ultimately decide those things. Cool is dictated by us. We decide what's legitimate, but us, the exclusive we, that is people who look like me, we decide what's cool. We are the culture, right? We are the producers of the most profitable, the most popular music genre in this country. Us. Fashion. Us. Sport. Us. Technology. Us. Beauty. Us. You name it. If it's cool, it's because of us. Jay-Z said it best. We are culture. Nothing moves without us. We just continue to give it away. We give it away. One person put it this way is that We are the oil to everybody else's engine. We don't own nada engine, but we're the oil to everybody else's engine because we make things go. We make things move. Us. And when we decide to be an engine, we diss it. Say what you will about LeVar Ball, say what you will about the whole Ball family. A man said, I don't want to sign with Nike. I want to be my own Nike. We were like, you whack, son. You played yourself. It's Nike. Oil. We're the oil. We down to run everybody else's engines but our own, which is why it's so easy for our culture to be appropriated. And what is cultural appropriation? I mean, it's a very hairy topic, but let's try to get some concreteness. If you ever take the class with me, you know I like things being radically simple, right? Cultural appropriation is a power dynamic where a privileged community dominates over a marginalized community by taking that marginalized community, their cultural markers, their artifacts, their language, their behaviors, not their beliefs, but their behaviors, their language, and they adopt them for themselves and reframe the meaning based upon their cultural lens. They are the curators. It wasn't cool until we said it was. We, not meaning us. See TikTok, right? They're Black cultural creators that are creating the culture that is driving what makes TikTok valuable. But do Black people own any of that? No. Kim Kardashian, love her or hate her, right? She said, oh, these cornrows, oh, these are Bo Derek braids. Girl, are you kidding me? Appropriation. Even way before that, rock and roll music is thought of like, that's them, not us. We created that, us. In fact, before us, there was no dominant musical art form that was indigenous to the United States. That is, when white settlers came here, their music forms were that of Europe. Shows. Us. Me and you. So the question becomes then, if we have so much power, why do we give it away? We have the ability to decide what's acceptable and what's not. Which then begs the question, what will we legitimate, what will we delegitimate collectively? What will we decide is not okay? What we decide is that we're going to rock with that. And that's not something I can decide for you. You, as old Kanye, by the way, you have to make that decision as you enter the discourse, the conversations among the community, whether you look like me or not. You, and even people who aren't of our same melanin, you. And how do we enter into the discourse of legitimation, whether it be accepted or unaccepted? The way we vote, through our voice, through our attention, through our dollars. Every action we take in the public sphere casts a vote on what is acceptable and what's not. Which begs the question to you, how will you enter it? You, great minds, whether you are a raw student now, you're looking to go to business school, which means you're obviously bright because you wouldn't be in this dialogue in the first place. You all are the ones that are going to be ushering in the cultural standard as we go. Culture is always moving. So you have to make the decision. What's that's going to be? At the very least, I hope that this was provocative. It was purposely meant to do so. I hope that this made you feel a little uncomfortable because it was purposely meant to do so. Because I know writing it made me feel uncomfortable because I had to ask myself, what am I doing? How am I contributing to the discourse with regards to what we collectively decide was acceptable and what's not? Because the cultural impact, the commercial impact of us is unbelievable. But we have to decide how we're going to use it. Are we going to give it away, continue to be the oil, or are we going to try to be the machine? Choice is yours. I hope this was helpful. At the very least, I hope that this pricked you a little bit to force you to sort of do some introspection, so perhaps maybe you will see the world differently, because the way you see the world informs the way that you behave in the world. Thank you so much.
All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up the floor for questions to Marcus regarding anything around his presentation, regarding anything around marketing. Obviously, he's a marketing genius and advertising genius.
I wouldn't go that far, but okay.
So, folks, if you have a question to ask, just raise your hand, please, in the chat. I will unmute you and then allow you to ask your question. And Marcus, what we will do while we're getting some folks to think through some of their questions, I want to ask you, when you think about the current landscape of influence in America, particularly amongst us, are there some people that you look at to say, hey, like, I think these top 3 people or top 4 people are really driving the culture?
Yeah, I think so. Let's unpack the language a little bit, just so that we can have a salient conversation. So when we talk about culture is again, not unlike cultural appropriation, culture itself is a hairy word, right? So what is culture, right? And I look at it from a very Durkheimian perspective, from a Emile Durkheim perspective, that culture is the system of symbols, values, and norms that are used to govern a collective of people. Not only govern what they do, but also how they identify, how they group themselves in the world. And culture, as a result, consists of 4 things, by and large: the beliefs that we hold, the artifacts that are normal, or the artifacts that have meaning, the behaviors that are normative, and the language that we use, right? So the beliefs, the artifacts, the behaviors, and the language, those are the things that make up culture, right? And we see it manifested in our nationality, in our ethnicities, and in our religions, and our passion points, right? So we have us in the center. There are these ideologies that are around it, right? Then there's practices that are informed by the ideologies. And then on the outside of that is the cultural product. And cultural product is on the outside of those rings purposefully, because those are things that are spread the furthest out. So the people who don't subscribe to the ideology or the practices can pick up these cultural products and, incorporate them into their own lives. So the question is, well, who's pushing the culture forward? I would rephrase that and say, who are the people who are contributing to and pushing forward the beliefs, the behaviors, the language, and the rituals, or and the artifacts that are normal, that are normalized for people like us. So from that perspective, immediately I think like the Breakfast Club. They are the brightest supernova when it comes to a media vehicle that communicates the beliefs that we share, the artifacts that have meaning, the behaviors that are normal, the language that we use. Right? They are that. I also think about like Killer Mike, right? His stage isn't as big, but he is a proponent and an advocate for the cultural characteristics that are normal among people like us. Now, people like us is big, because not all of us are the same, but at least the dominant cultural characteristics are represented by those folks in my mind. And it's no surprise that they too are cultural producers, right? Are you on mute?
So I do have a question that's come in here, Marcus. It's from Jocelyn Lane.
Joss, what up, though?
Jocelyn
and I are classmates from MBA's 2009.
So Jocelyn, I'm going to ask her a question for we couldn't get her to raise her hand so I can unmute her, but I'm going to ask the question. And Jocelyn, if you're able to raise your hand, I can get you off mute if you want to say something to Marcus after the question. So Marcus, her question is, you talk a lot about the influence of hip hop on pop culture. Do you believe that the genre of music has greater influence on the culture? If so, why?
Yeah, so hip hop music really is better, more accurately defined as rap music. So rap music is the music of hip hop culture. So hip hop is a culture. There are beliefs, there are artifacts that have meaning, there are behaviors that are normative, and language that make up a group of people that self-identify by this community, right? So it is a culture. Rap music is the music of the culture. And rap music is so unbelievably important for the hip hop culture because rap music becomes the means by which the mythology is communicated. The stories are told, right? Like rap music is sort of the folklore, if you will, of hip hop culture. So of course, the music is such a big part of the culture because that's how we learn what words to use. It's how we learn, what's in or what's out. It's how we learn sort of what dances we do that are parts of behaviors. Like we learn about beliefs. We learn about no snitching. We learn that because of how those things are mediated within the vehicles of rap music. So it's unbelievably important, right? So much so that we recontextualize things that are in the world that we live in. We recontextualize them into our own meaning frame using hip hop lyrics, right? Like it's almost like we use hip hop lyrics like memes or like analogies. Basically what you're saying is blah 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 blah. I go, yeah, exactly, right? This becomes a way by which we communicate and we make meaning of the world and the way we see the world, the way the world makes the meaning that we use to see the world influences how we behave in the world. So hip hop music, rap music it's quintessential to how the culture operates.
All right, Marcus, I got another question coming from last year's NBA Council President, Naja Edwards. And obviously Naja and everybody at schools knows that you're very hip to, what's going on in fashion culture. You keep the Yeezys on, you keep the nicest shoes on you. So Naja's asking a question in regards to Jerry Lorenzo's recent switch from having the Nike Fear of God collab, now switching to work at Adidas. She said, what are your thoughts on Jerry making that switch? Also, your thoughts on loyalty to brands and creators?
Well, I mean, look, so Adidas for the last 3 years, they have completely changed the game, right? Like Adidas overtook brand Jordan in 2016, right? Yeezy jumped over Jumpman thanks to Yeezys and Stan Smiths, right? So for someone who has cultural capital, right, I would go where I'm going to be most compensated. If I'm not building my own thing, then cut the check. What are we talking about here, right? If I'm Virgil, I'm doing the same thing with Off-White. Like, where am I going to get the most value out of what I do, considering value as a monetary form as well as a cultural capital form, right? So when it comes to sneakers, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there was just Nike, period. Adidas has invested themselves in leveraging the cultural capital of people like Pharrell, D Rose, even back in the day, Kanye, and so on and so on and so on, to compete. And since we're not owning our own sneakers, then go get paid. Unlike Master P, who's like, yo, let's buy Reebok. What are we doing here? Let's do our own thing, right? So I guess Naja, the point I'm making here is that if we're not going to own it, then let's get a big piece, right? If it's not going to be ours, then at least let us get some ownership in what you do. And Yeezy for Kanye is that even.
All right, we got another question coming in from On God. He actually is able to raise his hand, so I'm going to unmute him and allow him to ask his question.
What's up, Doc? Oh, you got to unmute, brother. There you go.
Apparently, I'm still not used to Zoom yet.
It's all good.
Question for you in relationship to, so I'm a member of the South Asian community, Indian American, born and brought up here. And I think what I'm starting to see is a decent amount of like appropriation of Black culture within my culture.
Yeah.
And so the question that I have for, or just like in general, is how to think about, stopping it, and or like how to think about paying like homage, or like ultimately I'm trying to figure out how do you approach that?
So I think that culture is meant to be experienced, right? Like the idea here is to put up walls and say, hey, you can't participate in the language and the music and the garb, the artifacts. Like that's not the food. That's not to say that at all. The idea is that it's about appropriation is about entering into these cultural products and giving it new meaning based upon your cultural frame, not giving respect, not giving honor to the makers thereof, right? Like, you know, we call America the great melting pot. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we're constantly exchanging cultures. I mean, that's a great thing, right? I saw this film about Sweden, that all the things that we think are indigenously Sweden are not at all. Swedish meatballs are not Swedish, right? These things come from different cultures. And that's an awesome thing. And we should be engaging in them because it brings us closer together, right? It creates a greater community, which is awesome, but it requires respect. It requires honor, right? So we can engage in a cultural product, which is the easiest part to do. Remember, if you think about those circles, it's me in the middle, the ideologies, the way of life that is the norms, and then the product. The product is the easiest thing to do. The idea is that if you're going to engage in the product, understand the ideologies that informed it and understand the people that are the makers of it.
Appreciate that question, I got.
Yeah, man. That was a good one.
We're going to go to Nathan Price next. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, man. Hold on one second.
Nate, what's good, my G?
There we go. I'm good. How are you?
Doing quite well, man.
Good. So my question is about sentiment. So you spoke a bit about TikTok, and recently there's a lot of conversation about Clubhouse and how a lot of the generation of interest in Clubhouse is due to the Black community, and really trying to understand and get more. If you can't own it, get a piece of it. I'm curious your thoughts in terms of what sentiment is in some of those people that are taking the steps to create, not necessarily getting support from the main community that's generating interest elsewhere. So that could be like a Tidal, or Isaac Hayes III has fan base, and he's struggling to raise 3 million, right? So I'm curious if there's any, if you have any perspective on why that is and how you can change that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thorny one. I like the way Charlemagne the God puts it. He says, in the Black community, the white man's ice is always colder than ours. Right? This is an ingrained frame that we've had, being in the condition that we've been in this country forever. We've constantly been a marginalized society forever. And these are hard chains to unlock. And there's a certain sense of legitimacy that comes from companies that aren't run by us, right? We think like, that's some bull, man. I could have done that. And because of this, we actually discount it. And that's sort of hopefully the provocation that I'm pushing for here. Is that like, yeah, we consume where the best things are for sure, but we got to first start by giving us a shot. And not because of the value propositions are parity, then what are we doing here? If the value propositions line up, the product is, pretty much the same thing. Why wouldn't we give to people who look like us? And if we don't support us, how do we expect someone else to? Right? So the gist there, and this is not to be exclusionary by any stretch. This is about looking at the condition we've been in this country for a long, long time and saying that we have to take agency for ourselves. And the best part about it is that we can do that. We can do that. We can. We just got to do it. Right? Again, we have to vote with our votes, vote with our attention, vote with our money, and vote with our voices. So like I was on Clubhouse very early, right? And someone was like, yo, why aren't you on Cookout? I don't even know what Cookout is. Oh, dude, it's made by, I was like, oh, sweet, I'm there. That's where I'm spending my time, right? And we should also. It's by and large, from a product benefit perspective, it's very much the same thing. Now, can you do both? Yeah, totally. Why? This isn't a binary thing. But this is like, put us on too.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
this
Thank you.
is and that's a again that this is a cognitive thing. We have to change the way we see the world, because the way we see the world informs the way we behave in the world. It's our worldview, man. Everything about perspective, everything we do is a byproduct of our perspective. And the hope is that we just start widening our aperture and how we see the world, so that our behaviors become more in line with what is ideal and havable.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
All right, we're gonna go to Lou next for that next question. I'm gonna unmute you now.
I was like, Lou, you can't ask a question not be on camera, fam. Like you got to do that. You're good. I see you now, but you were just the L before. We can't hear you though, Lou. You unmuted.
If you got AirPods, they might gotta check those out.
Get your system right, my G.
Hey, Lou, sorry to hear it, brother. You might have to put that. It's like a slow mo for you. Put the question in the chat though. We'll get it.
Put it in the chat, and then Kenny will read it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, we had another question come in the chat that I'll read out for you, Marcus, while waiting on Lou. So this question came from Titus Potter. How has marketing influenced the Black culture in regards to K through 12 and higher education? And how would you recommend changing the culture to further focus on education at a minimum, finishing through?
So that's a little outside of my knowledge base, truthfully. And even when you said that, I just thought about it. Wow, I don't know how much marketing has. Well, I know it has. Let's start there. I know that it has, and likely has not done enough. I think about brands like Sprite, for instance, that target specifically African American and Hispanic youth, teens, right? And the things that are communicated are things that are mirrored in the cultural products that they digest, right? That they consume. But I never see a lot. I don't see very much of market communications that are like, yo, it's actually cool to be smart, right? I credit, folks like Pharrell, for instance, who's like, yo, like I'm a nerd, right? That's actually a cool thing. Like when I grew up, like I had to be like, yeah, I took AP classes, but like, yeah, son, I'm still down, whatever too. Like I had to like code switch just to be in, right? But like the archetype of what cool can be also includes the fact that like, yeah, I code, son. Yep, and I'm working on this app. Oh, no, that's super dope, right? Like I think marketers, we could do a better job at like telling those stories to help it become much more legitimate. We can do that. Lou, did we get it together? Oh, Lou all messed up, man.
Something going on. This will be the last question we take, because I know we have another panel starting at, not a panel, another session starting at 4.
Okay.
So we'll take your question and then we will wrap it up.
All right, let's do it. What we got?
I think Lou's type speed is not the greatest, so we give us a little bit more time. But before that, we're going to say, folks who are playing virtual bingo, you do have a password that Marcus is going to share for you.
Yeah, it is Black Influence.
Black Influence, guys. So that is your next bingo password, Black Influence. All right, we gave enough time for Lou to get his question. You know what I'm saying? Good job, stalling. So Lou's question, from a marketing standpoint, how do you feel certain aspects of Black culture can progress into the mainstream and get the attention it deserves while also maintaining its authenticity?
Black culture is the mainstream. It is. Like that's sort of the point, that it is what we wear, how we talk. Like everything that we do is the mainstream. It's just not credited to us. It's almost like my man's question. It's not attributed to us, and nor are we considered, like we're not honored because of it. Right? It's like, shut up and dribble. Don't have a point of view. You just oil, fam. What are you doing? So that is a thing. The push here is that be more than that. And listen, us on this Zoom call may not be cultural producers, and that's totally fine. but you will be in a place where you are a decision maker. You will be in the room to be like, nah, fam, we ain't doing that. Right? Like to Nate's question, to be like, hey, can we do something that's actually much more, that shines a brighter light on who we are? I mean, I think about like the recent Ulta Beauty ad, right? Like those stories. I think about the Beats by Dre ad a couple months ago, that like, do you love me? Right? Those stories. Even P&G, the look, those stories. Like these are the stories we need to tell, because we know that what we produce is of value, but we have to be valued too as the producers. And you all will be in the rooms where these negotiations are happening at a marketing perspective, right? As a business perspective, you are in the rooms where it's happening at a communal perspective. And what I'm telling you, this is what I'm asking you, urging you, provoking you, is to think about how you engage in those dialogues, both in the business world as well as in the social world. Because it's us, you and I, who are in both worlds. It's up to us to spark the discourse, to drive the discourse that's going to lead to legitimation of us, not just what we create.
And that's that on that. We're going to thank Marcus Collins for always delivering an amazing presentation and always challenge the way we think about things. Y'all make sure y'all show him some love in the chat. You can see it all. We appreciate you guys. Our next event is going to be at 4 p.m. So starting basically now, it's going to talk about how Ross has helped so many of us reclaim our Black voices. So go ahead and move on to the next panel. And thank you again.
Thanks so much, everyone.